Lucky to get it in this country because the tick has to cling on to you for 24 hours to infect you, but some people do. It's a growing issue with 2,000 to 3,000 new cases in England and Wales each year. There are many variants, but the main strains are the US version affecting the joints and the European version, which damages the nervous system. It's not nice. Dr. Sarah Jarvis is here. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
You seen anyone with this?
I have seen two people who I think had, well, in fact, we now know one did and one we weren't sure because they moved away and didn't get their second test, has had the early stages. But I have occasionally looked after people in the later stages, and while it may not be common, it can be devastating. So really pleased to be raising awareness.
And somebody who knows all about that is Claire Enders, who's with us, media analyst, but has had Lyme disease for 13 months now. And you've been through some pretty rocky periods with it, haven't you?
Yes, as well as I had it twice. I've had it twice for 13 months in the UK, and both the US variant. And on both occasions, it's proved to be very difficult for Bupa Private Health to diagnose and to treat correctly. And that put me at severe risk. And as Sarah said, you know, in both occasions, it ended up by being diagnosed when I was in a very acute phase of the illness with massive fevers and real significant illness and real difficulty walking.
So when you got it this most recent time, you got it in a place called Lyme in Connecticut, is that right?
Well, it's 6 miles from Lyme.
Why is it connected to the illness then, that name?
Indeed. It's a direct connection because Dr. Steer, it was in Lyme, who first identified young people with severe symptoms of arthritis, which he felt was very peculiar, and that was caused by the bacterial infection. And he identified that in 1978, and by 1980, the first cases began to be diagnosed. This is a disease that has affected over 1 million people on the east coast of America in the last 10 years. It is growing every year because the range of the tick in terms of time and length and geography has grown from Lyme to reach Vermont and the Appalachians. So
and you say
keeps growing.
The young people had arthritis. What did you have? How did you know you'd got something wrong?
Well, I started to have terrible pains in my joints, in my knee joints first. I mean, absolutely crippling. They got worse and worse. Then I got pains in my ankle joints, in my toe joints, and eventually in my hip joints. And I was unable to walk right before I got a second Lyme test. It was sent to the right place, and finally I was put on doxycycline. So I did have the illness probably about 4 months longer than I should have had, and that phase was a very, very damaging phase. I had massive inflammations caused by the immune system response. And I felt so terribly unwell that I lost about 20 pounds. So I was sort of wasting away and having fevers in the middle of the night. And
probably worth
really
pointing out that Claire doesn't weigh much. She's as slim as you like looking at her now. So 20 pounds less would have been quite scary stuff.
Yeah, and listening to that, Sarah, does that sound like classic Lyme disease to you?
It does. I mean, what we would hope is that we would catch people at the early stage, because if you know what to look out for, there is a good chance that you will pick up something called erythema migrans. Now, erythema migrans is the bullseye rash, and it's called that for a very good reason, because it looks like a bullseye. It can occur up to 6 weeks after you first get bitten by a tick, but it starts off with a red ring in the middle, and that gradually migrates outwards, but you have a sort of pale patch in the middle, so it literally looks like a big red circle around the outside and a big red dot in the middle. Anybody who's been to the country, even if they haven't noticed a tick, because the big issue, you did make the point that you have to have it on you for 24 hours before you're affected, usually. The problem is, you don't feel ticks. They don't hurt when they bite, and they don't hurt when they drop off. So unless you're really looking carefully, it is possible to have one and never know it.
But Claire, you were in this place called Lyme, and you had Lyme disease before, so I'm guessing you were quite vigilant on ticks, were you?
Indeed, and well, of course that's true, but you do get bitten a lot in that part of the world. I mean, New England is very warm. There is a lot of animal life. It's also thought now to be transported also by mosquitoes in New England. So any visitors, you know, should be really extra careful, especially as the climate incites one to wear T-shirts and shorts, which is quite a dangerous garb because it does expose you to a lot more ticks. like 50% of the people who get USA Lyme variants, I did not get the bullseye. I did not spot this. If I had, I would have been into the NHS like a shot. My husband was diagnosed within 2 weeks of getting the disease in North America.
He got it too, did he?
But he had a giant bullseye, and the people at Nine Wells in Dundee were brilliant. They knew exactly what they were dealing with and gave him the right medication. He still had long-term health consequences as a result of having the disease for about a month.
Terrible. So you got this arthritis condition almost, did you? Knees, ankles, you said. Did your spine affected at the time as well?
Well, yes, I had a pre-existing skeletal disease, which I was born with and which is very severe, and I've had it worse and worse for 15 years, degenerative disc disease, as well as osteoarthritis, and the way that the disease affected my knees seemed to precipitate repeated spinal collapses. So it basically worsened everything in my spine because, of course, it was affecting the cartilage in my knees and ankles, and that will affect how you can walk and how your spine can carry you. I was exceptionally unlucky in having this, but also it's fair to say that older people, are more likely to be out in the greenery and will have osteoarthritis, degenerative disc disease, and other skeletal conditions.
Yeah.
I think I ought to point out I don't want anything to stop young people from going out into the countryside and walking. There are simple things that you can do to cut your risk. So you're absolutely right, Claire, but of course my biggest problem actually is all my young patients don't exercise anything except their mobile phone thumbs.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's play some music, and we'll talk some more about Lyme disease. We are with Claire Enders and also Dr. Sarah Jarvis. You might want to call us. This is Brian Adams, who was playing for Radio 2. Brian Adams, brand new day, BBC Radio 2. We're talking about Lyme disease. Linda Gould is in touch saying, in Peterhead, Aberdeenshire, I've had it. I caught Lyme disease 12 years ago. We were in Anglesey and a tick climbed up my sleeve. I said, not Scotland. She said, Wales. Bit me on the elbow. I had very weird symptoms, but the doctor didn't believe me. Eventually, a test showed that I had Lyme disease 6 months later. By that point, I was so ill, I was almost crawling around on my hands and knees. I had to have antibiotics for more than 6 months. It's so important that doctors recognise this early. I now live on the east coast of Aberdeenshire, and another tick got me. It bit me on my right cheek, and I got Lyme disease again, and I have to have the antibiotics. Awful, twice.
Bad, very, very bad news. Now, one of the things to point out, well, several things actually. I'm going to make a little start and do them quickly, one after the other. 3,000 may be a huge underestimate, because one of the big problems we've got is that we don't necessarily recognise it. It is a big, big thing in the USA, but in the UK, there don't seem to have been as many people affected, and it seems to be limited mostly to grassy areas, obviously in woodland areas, but the New Forest, the South Downs, Exmoor, the Lake District, the North Yorkshire Moors, the Scottish Highlands, and clearly Anglesey. But we may not be picking up as many cases. There is a variety of Lyme disease which can be caught in the UK that doesn't cause the same problems. That's the first thing. Second thing is that if you get bitten by a tick, we don't routinely recommend that you have antibiotics at that stage. But if you get any symptoms, firstly the bullseye, which not everybody gets, as we've heard from Claire, but also if you get it with, say, flu-like symptoms, feeling generally unwell, fever, tiredness, muscle aches, joint pains, feeling generally hot and cold, chilled all over, even if it's weeks since you've been in an area where you might have got a tick, do go and see a GP.
Horrible illness this. Karen Galpin in Cheltenham says, my daughter's 26. She's just been diagnosed with Lyme disease. The system here is flawed. We had to send blood samples to Germany for her to get the diagnosis. She's gone from being a fit swimmer and runner to being housebound. There's not enough support here, and the testing process is not sophisticated enough. And Claire, that happened to you. You said, I think it's Lyme disease, and they gave you a test and it was negative.
Well, it went to the wrong place, which did the wrong test on it. And yes, there is a place that you can send samples to in the UK, Porton Down, which is the NHS system. And on 2 occasions, the NHS was extraordinarily reliable in diagnosing my Lyme disease.
Okay.
And that was where they went.
We like to hear that, Claire, Sarah, don't we? Kiara Nuster says it put me in hospital for 7 weeks in 2012. I couldn't walk, I couldn't use my arms or swallow. The NHS testing is flawed. The treatment that was given to me was too late and it was inadequate. In the end, it took 7 months of intravenous antibiotics to get me well, and I use the term well loosely because I've got permanent nerve and kidney damage. This is so scary, this illness.
It is scary. We're hearing, of course, from the people who do suffer very badly, and when you suffer badly, it can be absolutely debilitating. But again, I wouldn't want to stop people from going out. There are simple measures you can take to reduce your chance of getting bitten in the first place, and if you're wary, if you avoid getting bitten, if you do pick up ticks and remove them in the right way. I'm gonna get you on to tweezers in a minute.
I want to hear about tweezers, yeah.
Then the outlook is better.
Matt Armitage is in Baldock in Hertfordshire. You're a landscape gardener, Matt.
That's correct, Jeremy. Yeah, now I got diagnosed back in 2007 when I was serving with the Metropolitan Police, and I was very fortunate to have a lot of support for some fantastic people within the job at that time. It took approximately sort of 18 months for my chronic symptoms coming out, and there was a severe weight loss. I lost 3.5 stone. There was mention of leukemia at the stage from my GP, and then I was finally diagnosed with ME, CFS, and I remarked to my GP, does that mean I've burnt out? And he said, no, you need to go and research this. It's basically an umbrella term for a wide range of illnesses, and that's what I did. Unfortunately, one of the co-infections I had was malarial type, and that enabled me to see that I had a 4-week cycle where there was a die-off of the bacteria in my system, and that sort of pinpointed it. And I was at the Police Convalescence Hospital in Goring-on-Thames, and met a young lad there whose wife was a GP, and her best friend had it. She was a Gulf War specialist as well, and she put me down in touch with a private hospital because I had 2 negative tests on the NHS at the time at UCH, at the School for Tropical Diseases, and my tests came through positive. They'd been sent to the US, and it was a matter of just getting funding together, which thankfully I had a lot of good friends, got support with the Met, people raised money for me, I got loans, etc. Police Federation got on board, and I'm here to tell the tale.
Well, and so you got better, did you?
Yeah, I'm in full recovery now, Jeremy. I resigned from the police last year to early retirement, and I'm back landscaping now. My company, My Green Space, and we're based in Hitchin. So I'm fighting fit and enjoying my life again.
And do you know how you caught it?
I suspect it could have been occupational in terms of, I did have a previous career in horticulture, or it was alternatively outdoor activities, but there are a lot of people in equestrian sports who get it, because obviously the horses pick it up. I've met a lot of vets, veterinary surgeons who've had it, because obviously they're getting contaminated from ticks on animals. But as that lady in America quite rightly said, it appears now that what is known as a vector, which is any potential insect or creature that draws blood, can now potentially give you that. I didn't have the bullseye rash. I never got it.
Right.
It got in my system. Okay. I went from acute to chronic phase.
Sarah, your thoughts?
Very sad, delighted that he got the help that he needed. Very important to remember that in America it's mostly deer ticks which carry this. However, in the UK there are other kind of ticks. Now, interestingly, it's not the ticks that are to blame themselves, it's the bacterium or the what's called the spirochete they get infected with. And hate to say this, chaps, but it's often from a mouse or a rat, something like that, sometimes small birds. So they tend to come out in the larval form in the summer. They just feed just the once, then they go back into hibernation, if you like, then they come out as a nymph, and that's the spring to summer. That's the time you really need to worry. Warm, damp weather, really key time, because the nymphs, they come up and they climb up pieces of grass, and they sit there waiting to grab a ride on their next meal.
And does the tick go into the body?
No, it sits on the outside, it grabs on, you brush past the undergrowth, it clings onto you. It's absolutely teeny tiny when it starts, and then it blows up as it gradually gets engorged with blood. The good news is you will usually have a window of opportunity before you get infected, even if it's an infected tick, and not all ticks are infected, because it usually has to be on you for about 24 hours before it then starts to pass the germ into your body. So it's not normally, it's not till it's engorged.
And you'd be able to see it, would you, on you?
You would normally be able to see it by that stage. It's kind of, yay big as
now, all kinds
pea.
of theories about how you should deal. I've seen people say light a match under it, put Vaseline on it. Okay, you tell us.
Don't burn it off. Don't use petroleum jelly, because what you could do is you could actually make it regurgitate into you, and that could spread the infection more. Never use your fingers to pull off a tick. What you need, and don't squeeze it, because you can squeeze the infection into you. What you need is a pair of tweezers. You can get tick removal devices. Anyone who walks dogs, probably worth investing in. Take the tweezers, fine pointed tweezers, slide them underneath, parallel to the skin, onto the mouthpiece of the tick, and then just pull gently and firmly away at right angles to the skin, but don't try and pull it off with your fingers. And don't do what we do recommend with things like bee stings, where we recommend you scrape it out, because you can actually make things worse.
Okay, Samantha Ash is in Windsor. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Jeremy.
Oh, what a story. 11 years old, your son.
Oh, he's had a terrible time the last couple of years.
Oh, so where do you think he got it?
Well, he got bitten in the local park in Windsor, and he didn't get diagnosed till December last year. And then everything sort of fell into place like a deck of cards, and we'd realised that the pip that he'd come home from the park with in his arm was actually a tick. And we've had terrible time. He was going to be referred to CAMS for mental health problems.
Oh.
And then they thought he had CFS. So he was just about to get a diagnosis of that when I stumbled across a picture of an EM rash, a bullseye, knew he'd had it. And it wasn't angry looking like some of them are. Didn't hurt. I remember saying, oh, if it doesn't go away, we'll go to the doctors. And away it went, and I thought it was a mosquito bite. So he got tested straight away on the NHS and tested negative because Public Health England are aware there are issues with the testing and serology in the UK and around the world. We've paid and had his blood sent to Germany and the States. Of course, it was all positive. And he's been having treatment since December last year, but he's at times unable to walk, borrowed my elderly neighbour's walking sticks of his joint pain, bedridden with chronic fatigue, memory problems, headaches, abdominal pains. I mean, it's absolutely disabling and debilitating. It's a terrible disease.
Sarah, can he make a full recovery?
I hope so. I really, really hope so. The sadness, Samantha, is all the symptoms you're mentioning. There are different varieties of Lyme disease, and they tend to cause more of one kind of symptom than the other. One mostly causes joint problems, one more causes nerve problems, so it can cause meningitis, encephalitis, inflammation of the brain, one can cause heart problems, and one can cause these chronic symptoms. And this is the big issue. If you get persistent chronic Lyme disease, it's often misdiagnosed as chronic fatigue because it's so similar, but you can get memory problems. Some people even diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Samantha, thank you. Best wishes to Luke as well. That's a terrible story. Claire, you were mentioning that this was only really given a name in the 70s. So what happened to people before that when they got it in the States?
Well, they didn't really get it very often because the range of the tick was only 2 weeks. Now that the range of the tick is from May until the end of September, there are now, mass infection rates across a huge geography, all the way through the East Coast. So actually, it's a disease that is related to the warming of the climate in terms of the incidence. And of course, it's also related to the fact that people have a lot of pets and so on. And there are many, many transport mechanisms for the ticks, and in particular pets. So as a result, it's really quite a new disease. I mean, another one to look out for, I hate to terrify people, but it has very similar symptoms to Lyme disease is chikungunya, which is now very widespread in the Caribbean. And many British people not only go to New England, but they go to the Caribbean. And that is mosquito-borne virus. And that, too, is going to pose a lot of challenges to people here in due course.
Call from Caroline Lewis in Wimbledon in London says, my son had Lyme disease in 2002. He was 6 years old. We were on holiday in the Lake District, and you've mentioned that, Sarah, already. I'd organised an Easter egg hunt, and I put some of the eggs in the bracken, and he must have caught it then. And it was horrendous. Nobody knew what was wrong with him. Eventually, my friend who was a heart doctor diagnosed it and suggested a test. My son was really ill. He had tie-dye patches over his body, and he had to spend time in hospital.
If you are going to go out, please do keep going out into the countryside. It's very good for your general health, but just be aware, if you can, keep away from long, overgrown vegetation. It may not be trendy, but wear socks and tuck them. Wear trousers and tuck them into your socks. It may not be a trendy look,
trousers into your socks.
Is
that what you do?
Yes, it is what I do, and I'm proud to say that I do it. And then, when you come away, especially with kids, don't forget that if they're in long grass, check them all over, head to toe.
Katie Welsh
take those ticks off.
Is also Cumbria. Katie says, I've got Lyme disease. I live in a small village. 3 people have been diagnosed with it in the past few months. She's in the South Lakes in Cumbria. You really have to fight to get a test with the doctors. Sounds as if, Sarah, the tests are not very reliable from what we're hearing. So is that going to sort itself out, do you think?
I don't know. It is undoubtedly a challenge. What we do know is it is very, very common for you not to develop antibodies, in other words, for the test to stay negative in the first few weeks. So if you've got the right symptoms and your doctor thinks you might have it, you will almost certainly need to be tested later on as well. But we do know that there are some problems with the tests. However, the bullseye rash, and I think more and more of us as doctors becoming aware that this is getting to be a bigger issue. It's not just something that comes across from the US. We know that probably 15% of cases come from the US, but the rest are English.
Thank you very much indeed. Claire Enders, media analyst, and Dr. Sarah Jarvis talking about Lyme disease. Claire, I hope your recovery continues apace.